Assalamu alaikum. All power to the people. It's good to be here. My name is Shaka Shakur. Many of you know me from the community, from the activist work over the past 20 years or so. I want to thank People Power Movement for having me out, because this is a very important discussion. And we have to engage the discussion of race, the discussion of culture, and the discussion of white supremacy. And it is good and healthy to see a forum based on that. So, to begin, in order for us to really understand, I have to come from a spiritual aspect, because I am Muslim. And it's a verse in the Quran, 49:13, that says, "O mankind, indeed we have created you male and female, and have made you nations and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the noblest of you in the sight of Allah is the best in conduct. Indeed, Allah is knower and aware." When you look at passages like that from either the Bible, Quran, etc., it talks about a human family, a one family. But then when we look at the society we live in, we're looking at a structure that has been designed with a political agenda that is opposite of that human family that the Creator intended us to be. And that structure that we're talking about is white supremacy. The brother mentioned earlier the implications of white supremacy amongst black people, which is black inferiority. I'm a firm believer that the only way we're going to change that is to change the consciousness of black people and the consciousness of white people. White supremacy does not only affect black people and people of color, it affects white people as well. If you look historically, white supremacy was not created for the entire white race. White supremacy was created for the advantaged within the white race. White supremacy was created for those who were considered the elite. As we see today, banks and corporations, they would be those elite. And the masses of white people who are struggling out here with us every day, they would be the disenfranchised who white supremacy has blinded and told them or programmed them to believe that because of the color of their skin, they have some hidden privilege. We speak about police. We can't properly talk about the police unless we understand the history of policing. The history of policing in this country, in America, started with slavery. During slavery, the police were those amongst the white community who could not afford slaves themselves, many of whom were indentured servants themselves. And once released from their indentured servitude, they began to ask questions like, well, why I don't have what you have? So what happens is now you will have coalitions designed between whites and blacks who understood that, hey, even though I'm an indentured servant, they're calling you a slave, we're on the same page. So they began to work together. So the elite of the white community began to separate them by telling the whites, well, you with us because you look like us. And we're not going to give you any property. We're not going to give you anything. But just the ability to tell those people over there what to do, because they're the reason you don't have. And see, that same problem is what we see today. And that problem is what causes the mentality that will enable a police officer to shoot you 40 times, come in your house and shoot you in your back, beat you in the middle of the street. Because we have been devaluated as a people since the beginning of white supremacy. The clearest example is apartheid. We look at apartheid, we look at Hitler and what happened there, but we fail to realize that both those models come from here. The model of white supremacy is at the root of every other problem. We will not get rid of sexism. We will not get rid of any other isms until we deal with white supremacy. Anytime we in the black community, and many communities of color, you're programmed, for instance, how many of you shop in stores where there are armed security guards? How many of you shop in stores and give up your bag when you go into the store without asking questions? How many of you live in communities where policing is over the rate that it should be, but we think it's normal? See, these are small conditionings that we allow ourselves to go through every day that program us, starting in second grade, to how to think and how to move. And we cannot jump from the issue of that programming to a worldwide unity. It's just not going to work. We have to go step by step by step in order to get there. And it is important that we of the African community begin to understand that from day one, there's a strong difference between race and culture. We come from a culture. Everyone on this planet comes from a culture. And your culture is defined by the land, the language, and the tradition. Race is a mechanical device created for political gain of a few over the masses. So whenever we use words like racism and we can continue to call ourselves a race, we are continuing that political game. So we'll never get free. So how can we free our mind if we continue to use the language? See, racism exists within language. If you're programmed to speak a certain way, you will indeed think a certain way. So we have to change the way we think and speak. We have to understand we're in a society that has programmed the masses of the world to see the black man as nothing more than a criminal, and the black woman as a loser, a weak person. So until we attack things like that and change this, we're not going to break the stereotypes, and we're not going to be able to go forth into the rest of the world and change the worldview of black people until we change our view. We have to become a people who are not ashamed to be black, who are not ashamed to talk about our blackness, defend our blackness, and teach our blackness. We cannot have unity as long as we continue to assimilate, but we cannot fall into the Western trick that assimilation or self-identity, the anti-assimilation and self-identity in some way equals hate. See, that is a trick of white supremacy, that whenever black people speak of ourselves, we must hate someone else in order to love ourselves. But if we do, as the Quran teaches Muslims, to look into Allah's creation for your lessons, well, take a look at nature. When's the last time you've seen two trees argue? When's the last time you see two plants have a problem with each other? When's the last time you've seen two animals fight about their differences? They all coexist because they understand their individual beauty. And when you understand your individual worth, then you can have a principled unity. Until then, you won't. So this is why we see these coalitions that fracture. Or this is why we see coalitions between black and white, but we don't address issues like, for instance, when I was younger, I used to be a drug dealer, believe it or not. So people would say to me, well, you all right, you were the drug dealer, it's the drug user that has a problem. No, both of us got a problem. The whole community has a problem because we're all affected by it. So the same type of treatment has to be applied to the disease called white supremacy. I'll give you an example. One day I was in a restaurant, Strictly Roots here in Harlem, and there were a line of about 4 or 5 African people ready to order their food, and the sister behind the counter was of African descent, and she was taking their order. A young white girl walked up to the counter, said nothing. She just stood there. Automatically, the girl behind the counter stopped and turned to her and said, well, how can I help you? At that moment, the young white girl proceeded to put her order in, so I stopped everything. And I asked everybody, I said, did we see what just happened? So naturally, everybody rotated to, yeah, the sister automatically helped the white girl. But wait a minute, the young white girl came there and her better consciousness, her human consciousness kicked in first, and she was willing to wait her turn. But as soon as the African sister used the teaching of white supremacy and began to ignore her own to address the white girl, automatically the young white girl, her remnants of white supremacy kicked in. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be served. See, so this is not an issue of blame on who, this is an issue of serious analytical discussion. As Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz said, until a black man and a white man can sit at a table and have a discussion about the issue of white supremacy without worrying about feelings, without worrying about who's going to get offended, we're not going to get to the end of this. We have to address this. More forums like this need to take place. Now, with that attached is spirituality. We often have been taught that spirituality is absent of struggle. Spirituality is struggle. If the essence of struggle, as we know it, is love, then how could spirituality not be a part of that when the essence of, not religion, the essence of spirituality is love. Love for yourself, love for your neighbor. These are the same things that will drive you to come outside and feed someone, to stand up when you see police doing something wrong. We have to get out of our mind the political. It's not a political agenda that drives you to fight for human rights. It's not a political agenda that makes a person stand up for what is right versus what is wrong. It is a God-given instinct in you to defend what is right. And when we begin to take the dogma of classic religion out and focus on the spirituality that each one of us possess, then we'll be able to transcend to a point where we can have this new consciousness. The late Steve Biko had a program that we in the People Survival Program emulate to the core. It was a 3-step program called the Black Consciousness Program, where he believed that first you had to have black love. And when we say love, not the usual I love you baby love, but lifting our vision eternally love. Then when we encompass that love, we will begin to have a new consciousness, a new way of thinking, a new way of moving. And that would give us true power. Now when we say black power, we're not talking about black power that's the equal to white power. We're talking about black power that empowers black people, empowers us to stand up and be who we are supposed to be. And in doing that, we will set the trend. Because remember, the struggle of the African indeed is the core of most struggles. And when we recognize that and move from that and begin to put ourselves in a position, we can then set the example for the rest of the world to follow. We also have to understand, like I was just speaking with Brother Jazz earlier, strategics. We have to be strategic in how we move. There's a reason I'm not in Bensonhurst. There's a reason I'm not in certain areas, because I wouldn't be effective. So we have to begin to employ people who are white to say, look, you want to help? Okay, we do need this help, but let's strategically go where we can be effective. Let's meet once a month and discuss, and then let's break out into small groups and go where we're effective and spread this work and spread this information effectively and principally so that we can have a real united front. Our united struggles at this point are based on reaction to the oppressor. They do something, we unite. We get cool, we get a couple $1 million, we go back to sleep. We have to have an ongoing struggle. It's important that self-determination be a part of this struggle. The black man in America and the black woman in America must be self-determined. If we are not self-determined, we will not be free. When Bob Marley talks about emancipation of your mind, you cannot emancipate your mind if you're thinking from the paradigm of someone who's had you captive for 400 years. We attack our freedom through a method taught to us by those who oppress us. And then we wonder why we can't get free. We wonder why we can't move forward. Until we are able to change the paradigm of thought and don't look at ourselves as different, don't look at ourselves as negative. We're not Negroids, we're African. And we're clear about that. See, the Caucasoid, Mongoloid, Negroid creation of the 1800s, and actually it's by Professor George Buffman and Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. They created this paradigm using the European as the first. And then it was the Caucasoid race because they found bones next to the Caucasus Mountains. Next, it was the Mongoloids because they found close to Mongolians, so they called them Mongoloids. But where is Negroid land? See, those people have lands. Mongoloid, the Mongols are real people, so they can attach. Caucasoids is a real place. But where's Negroid land? It doesn't exist. So we attach ourselves to everything else. And Negroid was given to us as a way to begin the dehumanizing process. And this process is the same process. We all know about the third jihad video that was shown to the new police officers, and it's an attack on the Muslim community. Well, the third jihad video is something late. Ever since the early 1700s, there have been thousands upon thousands upon thousands of third jihad videos directed at dehumanizing the black man and programming white people to follow that program, whether they benefit or not. Occupy Wall Street, these programs, this is a sign that even white people are waking up now. But see, while young and white people and people who have maybe been under the spell of white supremacy began to wake up, it's important for the black man to push harder now. Because now we have to show them that, okay, I'm glad you see that you're supposed to get this loan and you're not getting it, or you deserve health care and you're not getting it. But let's push past that. Let's push to what the rest of the world has never got. Let's push to what the rest of the world is dealing with, and maybe what your grandfather did to do that. You see, as a black man, everything I do is a reflection on the black race. Everything you do as a black woman is a reflection on the black race. But white supremacy has erased that responsibility from white people. Now we have a few conscious white people who are taking that stand, but it is up to us to produce, and them to produce more like that. See, because at the end of the day, we must share this land as one. At the end of the day, freedom belongs to every one of us. Human rights belong to every one of us. But it's important that we stand for ourselves. I'm speaking particularly to Africans. It's important for us to recognize our culture. Stop saying you live in a community. You do not. That's white supremacy. You live in a colony. Stop saying prison industrial complex. That's a slave plantation. Stop saying intern. That's slavery. Call it for what it is. We will not crush this disease called white supremacy if we keep tiptoeing through the tulips. We don't have police. We have overseers. We have patty rollers. The same name was given to them during slavery is the same name that should be applied now. Stop saying police. Police refers to peace officers. No, they're not police. They're patty rollers. They're overseers. And they're carrying out a destiny or a deed that was taught to them over 400 years ago. And they're going to continue to carry that out. Then we must strive towards socialism. This system, as we know, is a very capitalist system. Slavery was not an individual effort. Slavery was a conglomeration. It was a corporation that put slavery together. The man that was on the hull of that ship necessarily did not have a problem with black people, but he had to feed his family. So they would say, look, you want to feed your family? This is what you got to do. They would tell the captain, well, you know, we got a job for you, captain. This is do. Just like they get us to join these Marines and join the police and join the correction officers. These people don't go in hating. They go in thinking, I'm going to get a job, take care of my family. I'm going to get some bad guys. Well, they were taught that they were going to get people who did not have souls. So they deserved to be in slavery. That's why we're going to get them. And just like in the military, you know, I had an uncle, who may he rest in peace, who went to Vietnam. He told me before he went to Vietnam, he didn't know what a Vietnamese was. He said, but after 8 weeks, he wanted to kill everything that didn't look like him. See, this is how effective that training is. So don't think that that training just started with modern day warfare. That's the same training that was used back then to make you think that you're going in to kill someone. You know, I do a lot of work with so-called gangs or street organizations. I had a young brother tell me, he said, you know, ask him, how could you just shoot somebody and not think nothing about it? You know, that's a blood or a crip. He said, nah, man, that's a crab. And they call us slobs. See, because now you've taken even a little bit of humanity out of it. So it's easy to do this now. And we've been programming the black community that we're nothing. So it's easy to kill nothing. See, we have to put back the something in who we are, and we have to put back the something in all of humanity. And it takes us to, yes, lean on spirituality, because as Africans, it's a central part of who we are. It's what not only got us through the hard times, it's what built our civilizations before we had hard times. And we have to grab back that, because that is the only way we will be able to transcend this madness. You know, we need a liberation theology. You know, we need liberation in everything we do. We need to develop, like we have the Jename University, which is a one-day school. But in one day, we're able to deprogram 400 years of slavery with our children. This is what we're able to do in one day. Why? Because we start by teaching them their languages. They come in, they're going to learn Swahili or Arabic or any other language, Spanish. And we say, well, wait a minute, Spanish is an oppressive language, but it relates them to something other than this. And we pull them back slowly. And then pretty soon, they're Jumbo, when they come into class, Long Lake, and they count in different languages. See, they begin to know who they are. They learn in Gusu Saba, they learn Ma'at. See, they learn that they have something other than shackles and chains as a history. And then when we give that to them, we're able to move them out with a new way of thinking. Now, these children are 5, 6, 3, and 4. And they're learning next to adults who are learning the same process. In the People's Survival Program, we have free schooling. We have a free legal class, free everything. Why? Because we want to teach people that stereotype of we can't stick together and people don't do for each other, that doesn't exist. We just did it. When we feed every second Friday of the month on 125th and Lexington, we're feeding upwards of 400 or 500 people. No government grants. Jacob's Restaurant gives us the food. Other people donate their time and energy. Why? We do it right next to Pathmark. And we do it right next to Rainbows. Why? So we can show the contradiction. See, sometimes revolution is as simple as breaking a pencil every day you go to work. If you break a pencil every day you go to work, at the end of the year, that's a lot of pencils. Somebody got to pay for it, and some new rules ain't going to get written. It's that simple. But when we serve that food, we're crushing the stereotype that we can't do for each other. Black folks don't stick together. You have people with all types of histories. You're somebody. We're not treating you this. And you also have white, Asian people come on and eat, and everybody's one people. And we also show them, wait a minute, why are we giving food outside of Pathmark? And that's a multi-million company. Why they not giving you no food? Why you can't get a shirt inside of Rainbows? You know, we have to give you a shirt. And the people in Rainbows get shirts from us. The people in Rainbows get food from us. The people in Pathmark get food because they can't afford to buy food because they got to pay their rent. So what I want to stress at the end of this is that if we're going to have a real sense of unity, a real sense of conquering white supremacy, one, we have to do like you do in the doctor's office. When you come in the doctor's office, the doctor asks you what's wrong. And you say, well, doc, I think my arm has been hurting. And then he asks you, how long has your arm been hurting? You'll say, well, 400 years. And then he said, well, what were you doing before your arm got hurt? Well, I was in Africa minding my business, and I got hit in the head. And then he'll say to you, okay, well, you know what? You need to stay away from what you did. You need to go back to that. Stay away from where you got hit in the head. And let's call it for what it is. It's not a hurt leg. It's not a hurt toe. It's a hurt arm. It's not the smaller isms. It's white supremacy. And once we take the cap off, and get rid of that cap called white supremacy. Capitalism goes with it, sexism goes with it, racism goes with it, classism goes with it, and we can get back down to the struggle that Malcolm, Che, and everybody else talked about, which is a basic struggle for human rights. We're not struggling for civil rights. We're struggling for human rights. The right for each one of us to be who we are, to be who God intended us to be, and to speak the truth based on that.